Hello everyone, I'm Jon Evans. Welcome to another episode of One-on-One. My guest on the new episode of the One-on-One with Jon Evans podcast this week is Bevin Prince. Now, Bevin grew up in North Carolina. She graduated from UNCW's Film Studies program, and she played Bevin on the still wildly popular One Tree Hill TV show, which shot for 9 seasons here in Wilmington. She also recently reopened her high-intensity cycling center, Recessed by Bevin Prince, which you can find along Eastwood Road. That personal triumph came just months after Bevin's personal tragedy. Her husband, Will Friend, died July 3rd after being struck by lightning on Masonboro Island. This interview will be the first time Bevin speaks publicly about what happened that day, about the pain of losing her soulmate, about the friends and family who helped her regain the strength to move forward and to keep showing up. Bevin Prince, welcome to the One-on-One with Jon Evans podcast.
Thank you.
It means so much to me that you're here.
It means a lot. I mean, I told you the second I met you, I said, this is the conversation. This is the person I want to have the conversation with.
What does Recess by Bevin Prince, when someone says Recess by Bevin Prince, what does that mean to you?
It is community. I think that is the thing I'm most proud of that we've built. We've built such an incredible community. We show up for each other, good times, bad times. We don't expect you to come in and be any sort of way. You get to show up exactly as you are, where you are, and we do life together. We move, we breathe. It's not about doing anything right or wrong. It's not about your gene size. It's about, we make these really small choices on the bike that have profound effects in your day-to-day life. I've learned more about myself on that bike than anywhere else.
Really?
Yeah.
Most people would just look at it and say, it's got a pedal, it's got, in most instances, one wheel, sometimes maybe a second. It's a machine.
Yeah, it is.
But to you, it's more than that.
It's we always make the joke, we ride bikes that don't go anywhere, but metaphorically they go everywhere. I think one of the first things I learned on that bike was, at that time when I first started riding, I was auditioning a lot. I'd moved to New York City. I felt really claustrophobic. I'm an outdoor girl. I grew up in North Carolina. I want to be outside all the time. And I stepped into the room and there was a sense of freedom I hadn't expressed in a long time. The lights were low, nobody was watching me. You're just riding to the beat of the music and you're having fun. And that was something I realized when I was auditioning so much. I was trying to be something for someone else all the time. I was trying to get someone else's approval. I was trying to make sure I got the job. And that was the version of success that I knew. And when I started to ride more and more, I really found that it's not about anyone else's approval. It's about how I feel about myself and how I can make small choices, instead of when things get really difficult, quitting or walking away. If I stay in it and realize that a little bit of uncomfort isn't a terrible thing and it passes and it's a tunnel, it's not a cave, you come out on the other side with bright light and new vision and an expansion.
You weren't really a physical fitness nut before that morning in New York. And I've heard you tell the story before.
Yeah.
You were just kind of in a place that, I don't want to call it lost, but maybe in a fog emotionally.
I feel like I had really lost a sense of who I was over the years. And it was one of those things that it just grounded me and it connected me, and I started to really discover who I was and find my voice. I mean, fitness for me was always just, I'd go for a run, I'd go for a walk, I just did it here and there. I mean, I've always been active, but I never found anything that really changed my life.
What was the name of that place?
It was Soul Cycle. So I was a master instructor at Soul Cycle for 7 years.
And okay, all right, now that's one thing I do have written down here. What does master instructor mean? I mean, to those of us, it's like, does she ride the bicycle faster than me? Can she do it standing up when I can't? What does master instructor mean?
So it's a promotion. So it's basically like there's tiers of instructors. And as a master instructor, it's saying you're highly qualified, you're the best of the best, you It's a promotion. It's just, it's a title.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if the bike comes apart, you can't necessarily put it back together
absolutely
again.
not. That is way above my pay grade.
You haven't necessarily even had a smooth ride with the business since you opened it here in 2020.
No, it has been exhausting, but I mean, I wouldn't trade it for anything. It was the middle of COVID, and so we decided a big tent was the best decision. I wanted to bring this sort of community to the community that I love so much. And so I was like, we're gonna make it work. We bought a tent, we bought bikes, we got a small business loan, and we popped up in Mayfair. The bikes were 6 feet apart. Not really thinking fully. You know, sometimes best choices are made when you don't actually flesh it out completely, because it might have stopped me in some ways, but not thinking about weather and all of these things that we've come across. We've lost one tent in a tropical storm. I was on vacation with my mother, and all of a sudden I get, blown up on my phone, pictures of just the tent in complete disarray.
Oof.
We lost the tent, we put it back together. We've had to close for lightning, for storms. We have to take it up and down when things get really tough, but we refuse to give up. I mean, people keep showing up, and I will not let this community down.
But that seems to me to almost be the gas for your tank. When even one person shows up. And so when the first one happened that you lost, how did you move over onto Eastwood? Because I must admit, when I was looking for it, I went to Mayfair. I saw them in front of the restaurant, and they're not here. So it says Eastwood Road. Let me just drive, and I saw the tent, and I was, that's where they've got to be.
So we moved over, once we lost the tent, we luckily had great insurance. We got another one for a week and a half. We taught without a tent. If it was, sun was shining, we were out there on the bikes in a parking lot, just making it work. And then they are going to put something new into the building that we were next to in Mayfair, and I had about 2 months to find a spot. And I called the guys over at Autumn Hall, Brian Eccles, one of the greatest men I've ever met. I'm obsessed with him and that whole team over there. They were like, we got you. We're gonna put some asphalt down, and we'll put you over here. We'll make it work by November 1st. And they did it for us.
Full disclosure here, when I was trying to get in touch with Bevin to sit down for the interview, I was over the Mayfair area for another task that I had to run that day. And I said, I'm gonna try to find her. And so it was a rainy day. I saw the tent, I pulled in, I pulled up, and I had to dart from my car to the tent, and you're out, hat on, sweatshirt, lugging stuff back to your storage trailer. Your beautiful dog was following you back and forth. And I'm like, this woman is much stronger than any bicycle can measure. And it showed me a side of Bevin that I don't think a lot of people who know Bevin from One Tree Hill have ever seen.
Yeah, we refuse to give up, and we are willing to do the work to make it happen. I mean, this is one of the great lessons I think I've learned from my husband, is just make it happen. Just make it happen. If it's harder right now, it'll pay off in the end. Just get in there and make it happen. And we are just making it happen.
What was life like growing up? I know you were born in the Charlotte area, family moved to Raleigh. What was the Prince household like growing up outside the capital city?
Definitely eventful. So my mother was really into musical theater and music, and so we were always singing and dancing, and my dad knows nothing but goodness and kindness. He is just a top-tier human. I've never met anyone like him. If you've met Mike Prince, you know. And my sister is my very best friend. Like, she is my partner, she's my number one, she's my person. And I was a lot of trouble. We don't have to get into that too much.
Okay, we won't.
My sister was, always looking out for me. She was living her life in a way because she knew I would follow her example, and so she just really, kept the straight course. And I just can't. I had a really great childhood.
What did Bevin want to do when she grew up?
She
when
was
you
an
were
actress.
late? Did you want to get into acting?
Always, but I had no idea what that meant. I think I wanted special attention and to be seen more than anything. And I just thought acting was the way and the only way.
Did you do plays in high school?
A
Did
little
you
bit.
do community theater growing up?
A little bit, very, very little, not much. A little bit. I really got heavily into competitive cheerleading, which is
Wow, that's
a
a
thing.
life.
Yeah, it was a thing. Yeah, and I remember looking back, standing on the set of One Tree Hill in my cheerleading uniform, you know, saying my first lines on a television show. And I remember looking back and being like, wow, it really does all make sense if you can skip ahead.
Right.
Because I always said, why didn't I take ballet, or why didn't I do something more traditional? And now, you know, turns out all the stuff just makes sense. The love of music, the love of dance, the love of cheerleading, all of it just
Right.
comes together.
Well, you've got to be focused, you've got to be energetic, you've got to be willing to cheer for other members of a team. So there is some of that drive in what you're even doing now decades later.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I mean, I think the biggest thing, and if I can give myself a compliment,
Please, because I'm going to give you enough before this hour's over.
I think the thing I'm really, really the most proud of is that my superpower is showing up. You know, that is how I got on One Tree Hill. That is how I became valedictorian at SCAD. That is how I started this business. That is how I've done everything in my life that I'm really grateful for, is just showing up. You don't need to have all the answers. You don't need to know what you're doing, because nobody knows what they're doing in life. You just got to show up and figure it out.
I love that line.
No one knows.
Yeah.
And it gets really scary when you start to think about it, when your dentist is 36 and you're like, you're younger than me.
Yeah.
And I don't know what I'm doing, so you don't know what you're doing.
Why did you go to NC State? What was the thought process behind entering to NC State?
So my cheerleading coach was the dance team coach at NC State.
Okay.
And I wasn't much of a dancer, but I could kind of hang in there. And he was like, why don't you come to NC State and dance with us? And so that was kind of the reason I did it. And I had friends there. It was close to home. My whole family went to Chapel Hill. It was very hard for my parents at first. Yeah, very hard for them. But yeah.
Well, that's kind of like at our house. Both our daughters, Monica and Abby, both went to Chapel Hill. And when we got a dog, I wanted to name it Duke. And I got the nastiest looks. Yeah. They're like, you can't name that dog Duke. I said, Duke is a great name for a chocolate lab.
It's a great name.
Perfect.
It is. Would not fly in my house.
It wasn't, for those who went to Chapel Hill, it wasn't. Film studies brought you to Wilmington. When did you hear about that, and why the decision? Is that you saw yourself maybe taking that path?
I knew I wanted to give acting a go. I didn't know what that meant. I wasn't trained, classically trained in acting. But we heard, towards the end of the school year, that UNCW was opening this film program, and there's really not much in the Southeast. And I knew I didn't want to be too far from home yet. So my mom called me and she was like, UNCW is opening this film program. You have got to get in. And we immediately submitted my application and transferred over as soon as I could.
Had you ever been to Wilmington before?
Yeah, we grew up coming to Wilmington.
Oh, okay. So it wasn't a foreign kind of a place.
No, it feels like home always.
The beach. And I find it fascinating. You've said it a couple of times, you didn't study it, you didn't do it, because there are some people who, from the time they can walk and speak, they're going to be on TV or in movies. But you were actually an intern in the Fincannon and Associates office up there, the casting office. And the Fincannons, by the way, are tremendous people.
The most incredible people.
They are.
Yes.
And everybody in that office.
Everyone.
Are great. But it gave you your little avenue on One Tree Hill because they needed
extras.
A cheerleader.
Yeah,
right.
They needed extras. They were like, we knew you cheered forever, you were on dance team, can we submit you? And I was like, please. And I'd never been on set. So I was like, this will be a good opportunity for me to learn. And so I was still full-time in college and doing, these 12 to 14 hour days. Oof. And making $75 for the entire day, the entire day. And then eventually they gave me an opportunity to say a line, and then it just kind of kept going, and they started to write for me.
Take me back to that day when you saw that first line, and when you performed the first line, because it's not just, okay, say your line and then you're done. You've got to do it normally 2 or 3 different ways,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
What was that day like?
It was so exciting. I remember being terrified. Terrified. It was one line. Cheerleading is supposed to be fun. That was the whole line. And I remember being so incredibly nervous, just wildly nervous. But that's the thing. Everyone in the film business here in Wilmington, especially that worked on that show, they held my hand. They taught me about what a mark is, how to move, how to cheat towards the camera. I had a master class in acting on set, and I just felt really safe.
And what was the reaction when you did it?
From who?
Anybody else there? Were they like, good job? And then all of a sudden, did you stand a little taller? Did you think, uh-oh, a star is born? Or was it just, okay, I did that, let's see what happens?
I think it was, I knew it was the beginning. I knew it was the beginning. And deep down, because I had just kind of made the decision I was going to be an actress.
Okay.
And I remember when One Tree Hill came, I was like, I'm going to get on that show. And I just mentally made the decision to do it. And I had auditioned for a couple lines, 2 or 3 before they actually just gave me one. And I just kept showing up.
How did the relationships build with the Hillarys and the Sophias and the Bethanies? Was it just a case of then being on there, okay, let's go grab lunch? Because from what, again, I understand, you've become very close to almost everyone in the cast on that show.
I have. It was, I think, because I was a local, and it was Bevin knows her way around here. What are you doing tonight, Bevin? Where do we go? What do we do? And we spent all these hours together on set. I mean, there's all this downtime, especially for these big basketball scenes. They're shooting for 14 hours a day, and we're maybe in a couple of the shots, but we're sitting half the time, or we're just chatting. And we just got to know each other so well and became a family, a true family, yeah.
Young 20-year-olds,
yeah,
college age. Did you raise a little Cain in town?
Absolutely, absolutely. We had fun.
Okay.
We had a really good time. We had a really good time. It was, we had a lot of fun.
Was there ever a sense in, we're on TV, we've got to be careful what we're doing? Or at that point in time, was it just, hey, give me another beer?
Hey, give me another beer. There was no social media.
Right, that's true,
We had no social media, so we just had fun. We didn't have to worry about anyone watching us. And the people of Wilmington were so amazing. I didn't feel like when we went out there was a crowd around us. I think everybody got used to us being around here too, so it was just like, oh, there they are again.
Right.
And
if they looked across from downtown Wilmington, if they saw the basketball court, and there's, oh, that's One Tree Hill shooting again. What do you mean that's One Tree Hill?
Yeah.
Because we've been here 30 years now. And we were here during Dawson's, and then we were here during One Tree. And then somebody would come down, one of our family members would come down, and we'd be walking out of a place downtown for dinner, and we'd see the place lit up across the river. And they're like, what's that? Oh, they're shooting One Tree Hill. What?
I know. And we were in a bubble.
Yeah, it became second nature to us and to you as well, but to those, because the fans are still so rabid for that show. They love that show.
I had no idea it was happening what was happening. And I think I have a lot of gratitude for that. I think if we had been in Los Angeles, I may have been more aware of how big the reach was, but we were removed from Hollywood. We were in this amazing small town.
Yeah.
It was just us, and I had no idea it was happening. I remember my mom saying to me once, being like, "This is amazing. Look at this show you're on," and I don't remember thinking it was a very big deal.
Yeah.
I remember being like, "It's just a show.
It's fun.
Yeah, it's just
I'm going
fun.
out with Soph and Hill, and and that's the way it is."
Yeah.
First time somebody recognized you, you're Bevin, aren't you? First time? Remember?
I don't remember. I do specifically remember after One Tree Hill, I was in New York City and I was waiting tables because I'd gone to grad school after being in Los Angeles, and then, I guess people think the money never stops.
Ends, yeah. Right, yeah. There's a faucet we all walk up to, right?
Yeah, I had gotten really close to booking a Showtime show, and I was sneaking out of my 9-to-5 job in production, And I was like, I'm done with this. I want to have the freedom to really give this a go, to give it all I have. So I quit that job and I went into the first bar around the corner from my house, a restaurant bar. And I was like, hi, I'm Bevin. They were like, we know. And I was like, can I work here? And they were like, what?
Really?
They were like, you want to work here? I said, yes, absolutely. I need to make money. And they gave me the job. I didn't have much experience. Once again, I just showed up and I tried to make it work.
Yeah.
And I remember so often people coming in and being like, why are you here?
Yeah.
I was like,
yeah, I've heard you tell that story about when you were on the campus in Savannah.
Yeah.
At SCAD.
Oh, yeah.
And the young ones who are in middle school and probably doing that on the side said, you've been on TV, why do you have to do this?
Yeah. They couldn't understand.
Yeah.
They couldn't understand. But I mean, I knew that opportunity to go to SCAD and be there for 2 years was a shotgun course in learning about myself and who I am. And even more so than the tools I received there from the school, I really grew as a human. And it was humbling and awkward. And I had to dig in the same way everybody else did. I didn't get any special treatment.
Yeah.
It was just really hard work.
And that's what is that the tough love lesson that Bevin needed? Had you not done that, would you be as strong with Recess by Bevin Prince?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Not a chance. Not a chance. I mean, there's a lot of personal therapy and growth that happens when you are studying acting. You're having to look at, all sides of yourself. And I really, more than anything, learned hard work and how to be incredibly diligent, and how to handle myself when I doubt myself, how to breathe, how to show up, how to really accept rejection and self-validate, I think was one of the greatest things I learned too.
I've heard you say that. I've heard you talk in other interviews that I've listened to. The two things that marked with me to hear you say was fulfillment is one thing, and then just I don't know if satisfaction is the word, but being satisfied with, okay, maybe the acting side of my life is over, but boy, do I have fulfillment in getting on a bike and being a master trainer and doing this. When was that realization? When did you come to that realization that, and I think, let me step back a second. If someone offered you a part that you really like, my guess is you would turn
100%.
to it. 100%. So you haven't turned off acting. But I guess the question is, when did you realize that, all right, acting may not be the way I spend the next 50 years of my life?
I have a very specific moment of when I was teaching and I got called for another audition and I made the choice not to go. I made the choice not to go so I could show up for my class. And I knew at that moment that I was doing something that was making an impact in a way that felt really satisfying to me. It's instant, it's communication, it's presence, it's all these things. And I was like, I don't want to go into a room and ask someone else to see me and hopefully get their validation and attention. I want to stay here and do what I'm doing. And there was always a piece of me, acting is a really interesting thing. You're always anticipating a big break or a big reward or your moment. And so there's something a little addicting about that everything could change when I walk in the room. And I was so happy and fulfilled with my day-to-day life. I didn't need something to change.
Yeah.
I didn't need something to change. I was doing it. And I was like, okay, it's time to step back.
And those of us who, I've spent now 45 years basically on a daily basis working to earn an invitation into people's homes. That's the way I look at it. People turn on the news and they watch, but if they don't trust me, if they don't know that I'm going to do it to the best of my abilities, then there's a whole lot more channels that they can be watching, especially now. So I've always worked to say, invite me into your homes, you won't make a mistake, okay? And those of us who get that invitation almost have to, I treasure that invitation in people.
Yes.
And for someone like you who did that for a while, but then all of a sudden say, I'm gonna do something for me. That's such a Mount Everest to climb for those of us who have spent so much time asking people to invite us into their homes.
Well, in the same way though, in New York City, getting people to take your class as a new instructor, you're asking them to trust you. You're saying, please come in and trust me with your precious 45 minutes of your time. Precious 45 minutes. You have to trust me, you have to know that I have your best interest, you have to want to hang out with me, and you have to trust that I'm going to see you. And you're building those relationships, right, over time, and then the room's full. And everybody knows everyone. And I know every single name of every person in the room, and it's, you know, it is a similar situation.
Right, but this one is more fulfilling for Bevin inside. Which at some point in time we all have to basically say, I'm doing this for me. What's your favorite memory with Hillary Burton?
I have to say, Hillary got in her car when she found out my husband had passed and drove straight to my house overnight. And she showed up on my door and she was like, okay, what can I do? And she sat with me and she was just, once again, showing me what a special human she is. Her intention for being there was just to help in any way possible. It wasn't, look at how good I am, look at what I'm doing for you. It was just to be there with me and to help me. And I'm just eternally grateful.
Sophia?
Sophia, we have so many young memories. Oh gosh. I think I have so many memories with Soph. They just haven't been in a while. Let me think on that one. I think when we went to Vegas once to celebrate her divorce.
Oh, okay.
And I'll leave it there.
Okay. Bethany?
Oh, she, you know, I remember specifically one time just sitting on her back porch and just chatting for hours and hours. Just chatting and, you know, playing music and hanging out together. She's just, yeah. I just have a specific memory of sitting there on the porch. I don't even know what we said, what happened, but just feeling the warmth.
James?
Paris. We were in Paris for a convention, and we, me, James, and Stephen stayed up in our hotel room all night, acting like college students again, just playing music and hanging out, and it was so much fun. I felt like a teenager, you know?
Yeah. Chad?
Chad. Chad and I went to a bowl game once, a football game, for, I think it must have been SMU playing, because Sophia was with us too, and we all went to this bowl game. We took a road trip down to Florida, and we had the best time.
Antoine?
Oh, there's too many. My favorite moment of Antoine is by far, I had my biggest scene. Bevin was actually given a storyline now, and it was Bevin and Skills were going to be a couple. And I looked at Antoine as we were getting ready to shoot the scene, and I said, I'm terrified. I have no idea what I'm doing. And he goes, girl, you do you, I do me, we'll be cool. And I was like, that is,
wow. What a gift.
In his language, that was so profound to me. You do you, I do me, and we're going to be good.
What kind of feedback did you receive for the Bevin Skills relationship?
Nothing but love. People were so in love with that relationship. And for me, you know, at that time, there wasn't an interracial couple on the CW. It was the first time, you know, and I was so proud to be a part of that. So proud.
Yeah. When you drive around Wilmington now and you see the battleship, and do you still see the court there? When you drive past New Hanover, do you still see the basketball?
I do.
It must be just a sense of almost memories come flooding back when you make a right or a left in this town. It's
so true, especially when we go by the gym. I feels like it's just a wave of emotion and nostalgia.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's everywhere.
Tell me about Will.
Oh.
I believe I met him one time.
You did?
I believe.
Yeah.
But I obviously didn't know him. I think the British accent stood out, and I knew he was in the business world here. But we didn't do very much because of the pandemic, and so, a lot of that past couple of years, we really haven't been out. But I believe I met him one time in the past. But share Will with me and with our listeners.
Quintessential Will friend. I met him as I was waiting tables in New York City. He had a date coming. He was with his best friend, and the date was coming to meet them. And when she walked in, she was the opposite of me. She was wearing, giant heels, a tight dress, the whole thing. She was stunning, absolutely stunning. I'm in Converse jeans and a bandana. And we have a little banter about whiskey. And then I leave. I'm off, my shift is done. And he asks the other waiter, where did the blonde girl go when his date went to the bathroom? And he said, she's gone. And he said, why? He said, well, I was going to ask for a number. The other server put my number on his check. He screenshot it. He called me the next day at 8 o'clock in the morning.
Wow.
When Will is the most incredible human I have ever met in my life. Never did I think someone like him could exist, much less that someone like him would be the love of my life, that could see me for me. He's passionate and driven. He is a little crazy because he did an Ironman for fun on his own one Saturday. Just woke up and was like, I think I'm gonna do the distance of an Ironman, and only on Wrightsville Beach. He ran up and down Pelican 30 some times, just back and forth, back and forth. When he decides he wants to do something or he sees something, he doesn't take no for an answer. He goes and he gets it. Hardest worker I've ever known. Watching him during the pandemic with his company that's an news and events business, right. Watching him rally and lead the troops through that was one of the most invigorating and honorable things I'll get to do in my life. He's an incredible leader. He has the biggest heart, and that's the thing. The troops, everybody on the team saw how hard he was working, but they didn't see the hours afterwards. Where Will's he's up all night long, still there, and he shed a tear for he doesn't want to have to, lay anyone off. He didn't want to have to do any of that, and so he worked through that and he made it work. And he's sensitive and an incredible cook. I was fed so well. And he loved winning more than anything.
When you decided, you married and then lived in New York for a while. When you decided to move to Wrightsville Beach, what was that conversation like? Because this was a place that you're very comfortable in. What was that conversation like with him? Did you have to talk him into it? Did he just say, honey, if that's where you want to be, let's go?
I would have never asked him. New York was such a hub. We could get to London so quickly. We could get to my family so quickly. We came down. He was hesitant to leave. We thought COVID was going to be a 2-week situation, right?
We all did, yeah.
And we're in this 750 square foot apartment in New York City in downtown Manhattan. My window opens, 6 inches, if that. And I was like, Will, I got to get out of here. I got to get out of here for a second. And I said, why don't we drive down to my parents? We'll stay on Wrightsville Beach for a little bit. We'll just get some fresh air. And then when this ends, we'll come right back. And he said, okay. And we came down, and then we ended up staying 4 months. And we went back to the city once or twice. And we started talking about when we were going to go back full time. And I started to feel a little anxious about it. And I said, I'm feeling anxious about this. And he said, well, why don't we just move here? And I said, my parents are a mile down the street. Are you sure? This is a lot. This is a lot to ask. And he fell in love with Wrightsville Beach.
We all kind of do.
Yeah. He fell in love with it. Will is, very active, and he loved it so much. He was running, he was biking, he was swimming. He just fell in love, and then we found a place and we moved.
When did your folks move down here? Because they were still in Cary for a long time, right?
They moved almost 20 years ago now.
Oh, so they've been down here for a good while.
Yeah, they've been. So this has always felt like home to me. This is
right.
home to me. This is home, and now especially. Yeah.
Okay. And when you wanted to open Recess, He was right there with you?
He said, he's the one who put it in my brain. He said, I know you want to keep teaching. Why don't you do this on your own? You can do this on your own. And I was like, Will, I don't know. I mean, I'm a great teacher. I think I'm a really good person, but I don't really have much business experience behind me. And he said, we can do this. Let's do it. Let's do it. Get the tent. And he pushed me to do it.
Live Oak Bank played a big role.
Huge role.
They're such a, they have filled such a niche for small business, specifically small business here.
Yeah.
And you went there, and they were actually help make it happen.
They made it happen. They provided us with a loan that allowed us to buy our equipment, buy the tent, and get everything up and running. And they made it really easy and seamless. I'm not saying the process itself is easy.
Right.
It's a long, arduous.
Had you had a stumble here or there, would you have maybe said, well, maybe not? It seems to me like a lot of things fell in line and kept giving you confidence to be able to get this started.
The town showed up really hard for me.
Yeah.
Everyone. I put feelers out and was immediately connected to the people that were the ones that were going to make it happen. And I think that speaks volumes about this community and how everybody really rallies behind each other and wants success.
July 4th weekend. Nobody ever thinks that their life is going to change in the way yours did.
No one. It was a normal
I don't
day.
want, please, I don't want to go when you're uncomfortable.
Of course.
But I can't fathom, I wake up every day and I know that my wife is there. I can't fathom what it would be like to wake up and have her taken in the way that Will was taken from you.
It's a living nightmare. It's an absolute living nightmare. It was like any other day that we've done a million times. The storm was far away, we're on the boat, everything's fine, and then in an instant, everything has changed. There's no normal, and there's no playbook for it, and I know that everything, I hesitate to say this because I don't want to sound like I'm saying I'm fortunate in this situation, but I am fortunate in this situation to know that it was so much bigger than me. It was July 3rd, 3:13 p.m., and Will's 33. And it was instant. And the boat next to us had a keg on it. You know what I mean? Like the fact that he was struck, and right before he was struck, he looked at my father and he lit a cigar, and he said, Mike, well, if we get struck by lightning, this is a good place to be. This is where I want to be. And then it happened.
Wow.
Yeah, that to me really allows me the ability to process a little bit more that this is so much bigger than me, that it wasn't coincidence, and also nothing could have been done. Instantly, the people that were on the boat next to us it was a nurse, an ex-military, and a bounty hunter. And they responded so fast. And then the police boat happened to be driving by right at that moment, just happened to be there. So they were able to move him to the police boat. So there was, in my mind, there was absolutely nothing that could have been done. And I have to accept that this is larger than me and my understanding at this time.
People talk about lightning strikes. And I've never been close to one, but I can't fathom the fear, and you must have had to take a second to process everything, and then, oh my God.
I wasn't there. My dad's boat had stalled out. So we were waiting on sea tow, and we decided that the girls should get on another boat with the dogs and get off the water.
Okay.
I saw the police boat fly by, so I wasn't actually there in the moment. My father, my father, my brother-in-law, and his son were on the boat with him. Okay. And they said the sound was like, it was the most deafening crack you've ever heard, and then it sounds like you're in the movie, right? After a bomb goes off, it's the whoa, 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 whoa.
Right.
And from that moment on, everything moved so fast. The boat just was right there, and they were able to transfer him over. And so we had 2 hours that we were unsure of what his fate was. And that was awful.
How did you go about putting one foot in front of the other after that?
To be honest, that whole time is such a blur. I remember wanting to see him, so it was not an option for me to stay in bed. I had to get up and go to the hospital to see him one more time. And then I had a team of people.
You talked about Hillary coming?
Hillary, Lee Norris was here in a minute, and I had, my sister. I think about so many people in this situation that don't have the teammates and the resources that I've been fortunate enough to have. And I mean, I was so very lucky in that. And then I woke up one day and, it wasn't an option. Everybody was coming into town too. All of Will's friends. I mean, we had people from Dubai, London, Monaco, New York, California, like all Jackson Hole, Wyoming. I mean, everybody. Will was the most fiercely loyal person I've ever met in my life. And I learned so much from him by watching how he treats people and how he shows up for them. And every single person was there to show up for him and me. And so you just got to get up. And then at that point, his birthday was that Sunday, and that's when we were going to have his celebration of life, or Saturday, I can't remember. And I felt in my bones Will holding me up. I knew I had to speak. And it wasn't an option not to, because I know that man would have done it for anyone in his life. And so, and I felt him like hold my shoulders up and stand up with me. Yeah.
When I was very close to my father, my dad died. We buried him the day after the terrorist attacks happened. And I always tell people that the good Lord needed another doctor up there to care for the people who passed. And I once told my kids after my dad died, they said, we're not going to be able to talk to Pop-Pop anymore. And I said, you're now going to be able to talk to Pop-Pop anytime you want to, because he can hear you. Did the tragedy change your relationship with Will? And I mean that in, you were partners in body, but now you're almost partners in spirit.
It did.
Do you believe that? I
absolutely believe that. And that is one thing that has changed, I think, the most about me is I know that he can hear me and I can feel him. There have been way too many things that have happened that are just divine, and I know he's there. Like, I know he's there. It's not a question. My mom sent me this thing. Amanda Klutz, who also lost her husband very young, was talking. She had spoken to this spiritual guide who gave this analogy of 2 inches away. So in the womb, when we are in our mother's womb, all we know is that space. All we know is that space, and we're getting nourished, and we're growing, and we're expanding, but we don't know that 2 inches away is this whole other existence. And we have to pass through a portal to enter into this plane. And I believe in my heart of hearts that 2 inches away, Will's right there. He's right there. And I feel him, and he speaks to me, and he shows up, and we make jokes, and he's played pranks on me, and I know he's trying to get me to expand even quicker. I'm like, you can stop now.
Every once in a while, if I'm on the golf course, and this is really strange, I'll be lining up a putt, and all of a sudden a gust of wind will blow a couple of leaves, and I go, Dad, really? You know? And it's just like, you kind of believe that maybe they're just, okay, I'm going to use one of my, you know?
Yeah.
It's like I told you before, when I saw you that day, out at recess, and you were just doing everything you needed to because it was a crappy day. Now I'm further convinced that if anybody was going to put their one foot in front of the other, you found a way to do that. When did it feel okay to start moving forward?
You know, it's still so day to day. Some days it doesn't feel okay. And I think the thing I remind myself is I have two options. I can stay here on this planet or I cannot. And that's not an option for me. So I really only have one option. And I knew when Will passed, I said, okay. I was fortunate enough to experience a kind of love and support and partnership that I know so many people will never feel. So my life now is service. My life now is service. That's it. And I'm going to do everything I can to serve the people in my community and the people that work with me and my friends and my family. And I will continue to show up and do that. That's all I know. That's all I can do. Mm-hmm. That's the only option.
Where do you see Recess in 5 years?
Everywhere.
Where do you see Where do you see Bevin in 5 years?
So we're hopefully going to move to a permanent location finally with an indoor-outdoor space, which fingers crossed that happens in the next year. And then we plan on opening Raleigh by the end of next year.
Oh wow! Cool.
And then we plan on in 2 years opening Charlotte. And we just want to bring this community and this freedom to the Southeast and really start to expand. I would love to one day, potentially franchise and work with other people to get it out there as fast as we can. I'm really noticing a gap in the market where all these people from larger cities are moving from New York, LA, Chicago to smaller
pandemic driven.
And so there aren't these sort of fitness communities in these smaller towns. They haven't experienced the rise and fall of indoor cycling, and the people that are moving to the town, they are yearning for that sort of connection and community like they used to have in the big cities. So we're really seeing all these places that could really use this sort of connection. And
it seems to me that anybody can cycle. Mm-hmm. It doesn't take a whole lot of talent.
Nope. Nothing.
And if you just do what Bevin does and just show up, that's more than step one, but it really truly is step one.
It is, and I tell people all the time, people are so intimidated by the process, right? You see these videos of these cycling studios where it's militant and it's too much going on, and we are the absolute opposite of that. I always say, people show up for each other more than they even show up for the workout. You don't want to let, Heather down on bike number 1. She's going to be there. I got to show up.
Right.
And we sing and we dance and we make choices, and it's playful. It's just really nice to remember that moving your body doesn't have to be a chore. And you can also learn a lot and love a lot in there.
It's interesting. I would have never thought about owning a fitness cycling business in the same vein that I do what I do for a living. Mm-hmm. But basically, you got a great analogy. You're asking people to invest their most precious thing, which is their time. And I'm asking them to invest another precious thing, which is their trust in me, because that's the best compliment I can have, is that somebody trusted me with their time. The biggest compliment I can have is what you said earlier, is that you trusted me to do this interview. That I could never repay you for that, because trust is a huge thing.
It's a huge thing.
If you could give advice to a young lady who's out there. Now, there are different places now. There's Netflix, there's Prime, there's a lot of other places where content can go. But for those who might want to get into the business, what's a piece of advice from someone who's, I don't want to use the term been there, done that, but someone with experience in being on a very popular television show, and who's also lived life before and after the TV cameras?
First things first, the best piece of advice I could give is figure out who you are and be really sure. Be really sure of it, because self-validation is the only way you're going to get through. Only way you're going to get through. You show up, people tell you no left and right. If you have a list of things you want to execute, you can work on your craft then. And you can walk away from it no matter what and say, okay, I did what I set out to do. I did that. Now, is this right for them? Is this the right choice for them? Am I too tall? Am I too blonde? That's out of my hands.
Right.
So I can leave it there and I can walk out with pride because I've done my job. Give yourself 10 to 20 years. I know everybody, most people that I know that have invested that much time in it have either made it a part of their life and a career or have become extremely successful. And so you have to be willing to stay in the game. Mm-hmm. So you can't rush it. You got to just be willing to stay in the game.
Is this generation willing to work as hard as maybe you did?
I think so.
Do you?
Yeah, I do. I really see, I'm fortunate in doing what I do. I get to see a lot of young kids coming in, and the young kids that have come into the studio, they're inspiring. And the two women that work with me in the early 20s, and they are powerhouse women that just hustle. Like, they just get it done, and it's unbelievable to watch. So I do think they're out there. Yeah.
You mentioned a word that I will use and give right back to you, is inspiring. I said it that day when I first shook your hand after watching you for 15 seconds, knowing that you were no nonsense, knowing you didn't take no, you did what needs to be done, but hearing and being the recipient of your trust to be able to talk about what happened. You are an inspiring individual. Southeastern North Carolina is lucky to have you.
Thank you. It's very kind. I'm lucky to be here.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. I appreciate you being on here, and I appreciate you sharing your thoughts and opening your heart.
Thank you so much. You're really special.
A huge thank you to Bevin Prince for joining us on the One-on-One with Jon Evans podcast and talking for the very first time about the tragedy that happened on July 3rd. If you'd like to learn more about her high-intensity cycling center, Recess by Bevin Prince, go to recessbybevinprince.com. You can also find it on Facebook and on Instagram. Now, before we go, I'd like to ask you a favor. Please follow or subscribe to the One-on-One with Jon Evans podcast on whatever app you use to listen to your favorite shows. And if you would be so kind, please leave us a rating or a review. We'd love to hear what you think about our interviews, and the more feedback we have from friends like you, the higher we'll be listed on the apps, and the better chance we'll have of bringing in even more new listeners. I'm Jon Evans. Thanks so much for joining us for this episode of One-on-One.